My name is Ellen Desmond. I am with the Bureau of Student Wellness at the New Hampshire Department of Education in the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness. Thanks for joining us and tuning in to our afternoon bell session. Today we have kind of a special treat. We've got a panel here to talk about school leadership and how this time has kind of affected the practices that our school principals have been undergoing, and how they've been working with some of the strengths of the systems that they've built, the challenges that they've come up against, and some of the social emotional supports that they've been offering to their students and families during this COVID-19 time. So I want to first just remind you, those of you who have tuned in before, know that we would love to hear from you. So please feel free to spread the word and get more folks on kind of viewing our live videos. And we would love for you to like us on Facebook. It's really easy. Just if you click the like button, you will receive a notification anytime we're live. We are hosting sessions at 9 a.m. Those are our morning coffee chats, and afternoons, our afternoon bell at 3 p.m. And so we host those Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and we plan to do that for the foreseeable future. So we would love for you to comment and give us feedback about topics that are of interest to you. And during our live stream today, I'm going to open it up to our panelists in a second, but I will be monitoring our chat. So feel free to ask questions, throw things out for our panelists, and we'll give them a chance to respond. So you can find us at NH Student Wellness here on Facebook, or on YouTube as well at NH Student Wellness, and then on Twitter at NH Schools. And you can also find us on nhlearnsremotely.com, which is this kind of special pandemic time remote learning instruction and learning platform with lots of resources. So if you haven't checked that out lately, I highly encourage that you do. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Bridey Bellemare. She is the Executive Director at the New Hampshire Association for School Principals, and she has brought some lovely guests, some school leaders, school administrators to our Zoom meeting today. And so she's going to kind of kick it off with getting some feedback and some interesting stories and a recap of what's going on in New Hampshire schools right now, as we're all embarking on this remote learning journey together. So Bridey, take it away.
Well, thank you, Ellen. And first off, just want to thank you all for tuning in and have a great panel assembled here today of school leaders. As Ellen indicated, I represent the New Hampshire Association of School Principals as their Executive Director. And if you don't know about our organization, we are a professional development and support organization for school leaders. Specifically, we support school principals, assistant principals, aspiring leaders, retirees. We were established in 1974, and we continue to outreach, especially now beyond just membership, but any school leader across the state that needs supports. We have been reaching out and providing resources to everybody. Everybody needs the same level of support right now to do the difficult job of leading in New Hampshire. We currently have about 530 members across New Hampshire, and we're also affiliated with our two national organizations for secondary and elementary leaders. With us today, we have the president of our association, Jeff Druin. Jeff is the principal of, this is the benefits of going live, is the school principal of Boscawen Elementary School in Boscawen, New Hampshire. Ken Darnsey is the principal at Franklin Middle School. Julie DeLuca, principal of Thorntons Ferry Elementary School in Merrimack, and Shiley Davis is the principal of Milford High School. So I would like to thank all of you for convening with us today. As Ellen indicated, the topic of discussion for us today is around school leadership, but specifically, what's the role of school leaders in supporting social emotional learning now that we've moved out of brick and mortar and into remote settings? What is our responsibility in leading this initiative? So I would like to open it up and have panelists speak to this, specifically just answering that. What do you feel is our role as school leaders in leading this initiative? And we've talked about this before in the field. We're not school counselors, we're not therapists, you know, we are school leaders. So what is our role? And I would just say, Jeff, as our president, would you be willing to open it up for us?
Yes. So, hi, Ellen. Thank you very much once again for I'll echo what Bridey said. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to be on your program. I think, you know, really as school leaders, we have it's a large umbrella of different things, but nothing more nothing more important than supporting all the people that we work with, be it the students, the families, the teachers, everybody, making sure that everyone feels safe, everyone feels supported. And really making sure that we're providing our families, our teachers, our students with all the resources we possibly can to make these very difficult times a little easier for the families. So it's really providing a lot of supports and making sure that we're those anxieties that are already high, that we try bringing them down a little bit.
Julie, I'm going to ask you if you jump into, we're also at the elementary level, like Jeff. Are you in line with Jeff's thoughts? Do you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it's no different. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Ellen and Bridey, for leading this. I think it's no different than when we're in school. We look at it a multi-tiered framework. We have responsibilities in each of the tiers, whether it's at tier 3, really reaching out to individual families and students to support their individual needs. At tier 2, we still have groups that school counselors and helpers run, as well as other staff members and unified arts. And then at our tier 1 level, we are very thankful in Merrimack, but we continue to have our classroom teachers teach Second Step and other programs and other tier 1 instruction, because our kids, more than ever, whether it's remote or not, need the skills that are necessary for cooperation, for getting their bodies ready for learning, whether it's at home or here, whether how to cope and how to problem solve. And so some of those same things that we offered in brick and mortar are the same things we offer now. And I think most importantly, we also, within a system of care, are still the pointed resource for any community resources. We have partnerships with many agencies and many community supports that we can help families and funnel those resources to those families as well.
Thank you, Julie. I'm going to go to Ken next. Ken and Shaylee, where you deal with middle and high school students, the developmental needs that you see are a little different, but what's your take from the middle and high school levels? Ken, we'll start with you.
So, frankly, we have some rather not unique challenges, but certainly additional challenges when it comes to our socioeconomics. And also the age level has a difficulty with organization, motivation, and then dealing with the understanding that our staff wanted to be prepared to have not a lot of work, but work for the kids to do as soon as they were in their homes with their Chromebooks and started to do it. And what we came to find out was that the workload seemed overwhelming. It seemed overwhelming to the kids. The parents had the misconception that they were being homeschooled. And so we had to sort of unburden the parents from teaching their kids and make them realize that as long as they were just helping with the facilitation, that we would continue to assume the responsibility of teaching the kids, but also maintaining relationships with them. Among the things that we did during the first week or 10 days was to make sure that we were connected with each and every single household. We started with those that were immediate, which is, the vast majority. And then during the next several days or perhaps week, then we started chipping away at the ones who had problems with connectivity or with scheduling. Some of the parents were working. Some of the parents were out of work. We had multiple sibling households. So the problem was that we had students that needed to access the internet or their teachers during the course of the day. And then we had to help the teachers coordinate the work that they were assigning, because they wanted to make sure that they were putting together work for the kids that was what they could handle while they were still having the challenges of scheduling and interruptions and and all the other stresses that were coming on the household. Not to mention the fact that the teachers were feeling stressed. They had their own children and their own households and their own responsibilities they were taking care of. So by the time we were 4 or 5 days into it, we come to realize what was going on, and we stepped back. And we really took the time to have the teachers sort of find out where their priorities were, and it was about relationships, what were the things that they could do, and understand how to care for themselves so they could care for the kids.
Thank you, Ken. Shaylee, as a high school leader, how do you see your role in supporting students' social emotional needs during these times of remote instruction?
Well, when I consider their social emotional needs, I consider the incredible importance that peer relationships have. This is a time in high school where, you know, students are really starting to individualize, and their peer relationships and their relationships here at the high school are really foremost in their hearts and minds. You know, they have the security of their home and their parents and their loved ones, but they want to be together with their peers and with those teacher mentors. And so that has been foremost in my mind, is how do we keep that community vibrant and alive? How do we keep those kids connected to each other at a time when they can't be together? And so in order to do that, really pulling together some of the administrative and support staff teams and finding ways that we can keep kids connected. And one of those ways is that we created an in-house website using the Google platform. And on that site, it really becomes a way to celebrate our community. Faculty and administrators have created daily videos for the kids. We also feature artwork from the students. We're looking into doing some blogs for the kids. We celebrate their birthdays. We run competitions. So last week was studying with your favorite furry study buddy. And so all of those things are our attempts to keep our community vibrant. Julie, you talked about the tier one, the different tiers at the high school. And, you know, at this point in time, we're all stressed. We're all anxious. We are all adjusting to this new world. And so the question for me is going to be, how do I keep kids at tier one? And how do we bring them through this experience without popping them up to tier two? And I believe that we do that by keeping the relationships vibrant.
Thank you, Shaylee. I'm going to speak to something that you just, some language you just shared, tier one and tier two. For our viewers, could you give an example of what it is you're referencing when you speak to the tier one population of your students?
Sure. So when we look at students, either through an academic or a behavioral lens, we look at them in terms of tiers. So a tier one student is a student who comes in and into a classroom and perhaps has the normal, you know, teenage challenges that they go through, but by forming relationships with their teachers, they are able to continue to access their academics and follow the behavior guidelines of the schools. Students, when they are struggling with academics or behavior, we tend to see them in tier two, or perhaps life events that have been really unsettling or disruptive for them. And in the tier two, that's when they need an extra layer of support. So perhaps through school counseling, or you know, got through other means like this meeting with the social worker or things like that. And so when I say tier two, tier one, what I mean is that we want kids to continue to be able to perform well academically, to feel safe and supported within their learning community.
Thank you. I'm going to jump back to Jeff. Jeff, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges right now that school leaders face in making sure that kids don't fall through the cracks, you know, and that not just their academic needs are being met, but that these social emotional needs are being addressed?
Yeah, so I think that you know, there are a few different things. I think that first of all, we have a lot of families who are essential workers. So they might be, you know, working 3 days for a shift, and we might feel like we don't have them because those kids are going, you know, to another place to stay. So we might not hear from them for 3 days, and then all of a sudden we get them back after those 3 days. So that's one of the things that we're working on, is trying to make sure that we know, and I know a lot of principals are making sure that we know when those people are working, so that way we don't feel like we've lost them off the grid, per se. The other thing is when we're talking about, a lot of areas that are rural, where in New Hampshire, we're talking a lot about losing Wi-Fi and connectivity issues. We've had several students in our district, and I know of other ones that we've provided hotspots to, so that way they can have the hotspots there. Never mind the device piece. If you can have a device, but if you don't have Wi-Fi, as we all know, you can have some problems of connectivity. So all of those different facets are things that are new to us. We're kind of going through as this piece and trying to figure out the best ways to put those pieces into play, and so that sometimes adds on to those anxieties for families. So making sure we support them in providing them with those resources to be able to connect and to continue on with those relationships, like Shaylee was just talking about. Because relationships are the most important things. That's our job right there, is building relationships, making sure kids feel comfortable when they come to the brick and mortar. We're trying to do the same thing when we're teaching them virtually, working with them virtually. That we're trying to be consistent and making sure that those relationships are there, and those people that they look forward to seeing every day are there also virtually.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I come in and ask a question, pose a question to all of you?
Hey.
I have found the relationships that we have been trying to plant the seeds as an office and kind of grow and nurture over the last few years have really exploded during this time. We've found that people are so eager to be thought partners and resource partners. And I was wondering if there's a specific community partner or some resource that really you've seen kind of that relationship really just blossom during this time as a strength. Is there a specific maybe group in your community or a certain population where you've really seen those relationships grow and you've kind of seen the fruits of your labor?
I think it's the parents. I mean, I have to say, in our community, when I came to, I'm in my second year at Franklin Middle, and the thing that the staff said is that you won't be able to find a way to connect with the parents. You're going to have to focus on the kids. And to tell you the truth, this situation has created a bond between our staff and our parents that I never could have imagined. These people are emailing, contacting us, using our different ways to communicate, whether it's phones or Remind, one of our platforms we use. Our parents are becoming partners on Google Classroom and our Go Guardian, which is our way of monitoring student performance. So I have to say that, and interestingly enough, if someone doesn't have a connection with a parent, we sort of poll the staff and say, hey, does anybody know how to connect with this one? And then somebody else does, and then they can make a connection between them. So I have to say, in their frustration in trying to figure out how to do, and their inability to grasp what we do every day, and their amazement at what we get done, since they are trying to do the same thing, I think that they've developed a brand new appreciation for what we do. And I think that that's something that's going to hopefully continue once we all get back in the building.
Thank you, Ken. Julie, I'm going to jump to you. We've been talking a lot about what it means to lead this initiative as social emotional learning, and what does that mean? What is social emotional learning and what is it not? I think sometimes there's a misconception that when we're dealing with social emotional learning in schools, we're only dealing with students and families that are in crisis. Would you be able to speak to that?
Again, Shaylee really did a nice job defining the different tiers, the layers that are involved with this. And I can say that when we first embarked on this journey of how important social and emotional learning is, it was important to say what it's not. And it's not mental health counseling. It's not mental health screening, right? We have community partners that are the therapists that do the work that is required when it comes to students' mental health needs. Our job is to make sure that children have the two things, the social and emotional learning skills to navigate in the world, whether it be for career or college readiness, and two, that we have the learning conditions available and existing in our schools so that students can learn. And the brain research will tell you that students no matter what reading or writing or math assignment or chemistry that you offer, if students don't feel safe, cared for, connected, in relationship with an adult or with each other, learning will not happen. So that's really the context of social and emotional learning. It's also us as leaders supporting educators, people on our team just as much, giving them the conditions so that they can lead and teach in a way that makes sense for their kids. It's also being there for parents and listening and maybe not having all the answers, but saying, I'm in it with you and we're going to get through this. And I'm all in, and being vulnerable and saying we're going to find the answers together. I think it's interesting as I've been listening, the biggest thing that parents in reaching out to many of the leaders in our district is they're seeking clarity. So we'll get a lot of emails. I heard that everybody's going to be retained next year, right? No, that's a national rumor, but that's not true, right? But that's okay. I'd rather have families reach out to us. But in particular, right now, they're seeking clarity and transparency. And how are we going to work together when we may have the majority of our kids that are coming in with gaps in learning, where back in the day, it may have only been 20%. And so it's being fully transparent. It's being with them in partners in planning, and also saying, no, this is and is not true.
Thank you. I think educators certainly have a very challenging role, as do parents, as do school leaders, as we've transitioned to remote instruction. And with that comes a lot of anxiety, fear, stress. So as school leaders, it's also our responsibility to try hard, despite all of those difficulties we're facing, to model overall wellness. So how as school leaders are you doing that? And perhaps, Jeff, I'll have you start.
Sure. Yeah, I think, obviously we all know wellness is an extremely important piece for our own well-being, blood pressure, all those different things. So I think that, modeling and talking with our staff, talking with students that we're, I'm jumping into classroom morning meetings with, talking about what I'm doing is how I'm going with my family for a walk today, talking to them about, just going on a hike or riding bikes or playing basketball or doing those things that you enjoy on a daily basis, and letting them know that's what they need to be doing, enjoying the time to go outside. Don't sit there all day and sit behind the screen. We want certain screen time for academics, and then close that lid, go outside, enjoy the outside weather. Obviously not today, it's a little rainy out there, but on other days, absolutely. Yesterday was a perfect example of a nice day to get out there and just to do some fun stuff outside with the family and spend that family time.
Thank you. Shaylee?
One of the things, just going back to something Julie said, that I think models health is that I've said recently, this feels like we were getting ready for the beginning of the school year where the scenarios kept shifting. And having clarity of communication is so incredibly important for a school leader. But when things change day by day, you can find that your communication has changed along with it. And it's a time when, the emotional health of parents and kids, and especially in high school, this is the penultimate time for kids, their second semester, senior year, fourth quarter, what they've been looking forward to since kindergarten. And so they want answers and they want them right away. And so what I found that I've tried to do is say, I don't have the answers, but I am guided by these philosophies, and I'm guided by philosophies of fairness, or sharing, this is what's important to me. It's important to me that we still have these events. So we don't know when they're going to happen, but because these events are important to me, then they will happen. And I can't give you the answers, but they will happen. Going back to what Jeff said, one of the things that we've done to model health is in our faculty little video blurbs. One of our student service director played a saxophone for the kids and said, I carve out time every day to do things I love, and music is one of them. And another one of the administrators had clips of him playing basketball. So we're hoping that by modeling that positivity, modeling us in action, that we will be showing the kids how they can go through this tough time, still doing the things they love and finding joy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other panelists want to speak to that?
And
Ken?
hopefully we'll develop the habits that will carry in so that because of this time, then when we actually get into our buildings again, perhaps we'll have a much better perspective on how we prioritize things. And I have to say that it certainly has helped me trying to figure out ways to care for myself, and therefore say, if you're going to care for others, I insist that you do so. I insist that you step away from what you're doing when this is going on. So those are the kinds of things that have really been helpful. I've been listening to some meditative speeches and, sit down and listen to these talks. And one of the things that they talked about is we're suffering from anxiety in a big way. When are we going to go back? When is the next deadline going to happen? Are we going to be this? And what the person said is the best way to cure anxiety is to live in the present, to live for right now, to think about what are you doing right now and how can you do that the best that it can be. Whatever happens, there's almost nothing we can do to affect how that's going to, we'll deal with that when it comes. But right now, living in the present is among the best ways that you can to perform the best.
And Ellen, I think I have time for to pose one more question before we then take questions. Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've done a great job of kind of highlighting the role of school leader in helping to lead this initiative of social and emotional learning. I'm wondering if some of the panelists might speak to so then what, right? We have this role in our schools. How does this benefit students that are looking towards the workforce? Is this just something we do in a brick and mortar or remote setting now, or is there a transference of this learning that you feel is foundational as to why this is a priority for us as school leaders? Julie, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think that when we talked a little bit before, we're at an interesting time. We're kind of pivoting a little bit, at least in Merrimack. And where I hear what Ken says about being in the present moment, in order for people to feel productive and hopeful, there has to be a pivot towards forward planning. So we're having the conversations about how do we embrace what we've learned, whether it be through educators and students, and how do we sustain that? And this is the direction we've been wanting to go anyway. So, for example, is we are creating an amazing historical storage for all these amazing videos and recordings that classroom teachers are doing. So our vision would be next year, if we can somehow collect all this, is how can we leverage those video recordings perhaps in an RTI way, or perhaps into students' learning centers if they're not receiving it, in terms of extensions and enrichment, because all this is already out there. So this repository of wonderful work that teachers are doing and educators are doing, how can we move that going forward? So that's like the forward planning piece. The other piece we're thinking about is transitions for kids. We know when they come back, whenever, it's going to be a major transition. So as we consider placement, instead of the traditional placement of moving classes around, perhaps there's a way that we can minimize transition for kids, whether it be through looping or keeping classes intact and moving classes. So all of these practices that we're learning in remote learning have really application for a master schedule, right? There's community time, there's whole school check-ins, things that are happening more broadly. How do we continue with the integrated planning that has been happening? So all of these are translating into planning for when students come back, and at a minimum for September as we plan the next school year.
Thank you. So, Ellen, I believe you have questions for members of the panel.
Yeah, so one of them, I think, Julie, what you just mentioned segues really nicely. I would love to hear from all of you. What is one thing that when we're out of the woods on this, one thing that you want to take from this time that you'd like to sustain in your school communities? Maybe two if you have multiple. So it sounds like the prioritization of minimizing those transitions for students at Thorntons Ferry, and building in that common time, that whole school time, is really something that Merrimack is thinking about. And so I'd really love to hear from other schools. What's some bright spot that you really want to make sure becomes the new normal? I've seen that out there, that normal wasn't cutting it before now, and so this is an opportunity for us to redefine and reset a little bit. And since we've been thrown into it, a lot of wonderful things have organically happened. And so I'm wondering if there's a takeaway that you're like, yes, this is absolutely a practice or a process or a relationship that we want to maintain moving forward in our school community.
Well, I've been incredibly impressed with my faculty, because there were people in the faculty that weren't doing a lot of online type of things. They weren't using Google Classroom. Still terrific teachers, but they weren't using a broad range of technology. And the way that they have just stepped up and showed a lot of courage and hard work and have taken it on. And now what it does is it opens up possibilities to look at flipped classrooms, to look at recorded instruction for reteaching, for remediation. And so now that they have embraced this, maybe they've shaken hands with it so far, but they've gotten to know it and they're using it, and they can see the implications for the future. I think that it can definitely create a richer program for us at the high school.
Yeah, and even at the elementary school too. I think that you're right. I think it's allowed people an opportunity to explore and try to develop a sense of comfort as we've been going through this with the technological aspect of okay, well, I never used Google Classroom before, but I need to try it because I want to make sure I'm connected with. And I think it's really opened up some doors that when we get back, that I think those doors will continue to be open, and it'll allow for things to be able to be done in a little in a different way. But it's going to allow for a little bit more versatility.
Ken, did you want to weigh in?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking. We've established a 9 o'clock gathering of staff every morning, every weekday morning, and it's totally invitational. And most of the days we have about 20. Some days we've had it into the 30s, but it only lasts 30 minutes. We set the timer, and actually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we in the afternoon, in the mid-morning, we invite the paraprofessionals and all the rest of the staff to come in. And so the takeaway I've got from this is that I've had more face-to-face conversations with my colleagues, and they've had more face-to-face conversations with each other than we perhaps have ever had. And when I visit, every morning right after we do the pledge, I try to visit every single classroom and say good morning to the boys and girls. And I'm going to be a lot more saying good morning to the teachers at the same time that I do that. And interestingly enough, I've apologized for interrupting to say good morning, because I know they have things to do, and I know that that connection is something that I believe that I want to take with me, and for us to have all the way through. It'll be nice for us to have a face-to-face every morning once we get back in our buildings.
Ellen, may I answer your question from a state perspective?
Absolutely, yes, please.
So I think a huge positive out of our current way of being, as I like to refer to it, rather than the new normal, is because this isn't normal, right? It's a practice that we've implemented as a result of a national pandemic, a crisis. And so out of that, I see some real positives, as the panelists have articulated so nicely today. At the state level, the positives are that like organizations have come together in partnership to really make sure we are working in best service of school leaders, community members, students, board members, really, really strong partnerships have come from this very challenging situation. And that has also expanded to our relationships with nationals. I mean, there has been a significant outreach from the national, state to the localized level. I see that as a real positive outcome of a difficult situation.
Thank you. That's fantastic. I agree with you. I think that the relationship building, like I said, I think we really are seeing kind of the fruits of our labor. And it's interesting to me that as we're all kind of in quarantine and isolation, the world does seem a little bit smaller. New Hampshire certainly seems like a smaller state. We're all accessing the same resources and sharing them amongst each other. And that's really wonderful to see that there is this incredible network of supports that is out there that you all have built, and now we're able to kind of tap into it. So I just see it as this opportunity. It is a very odd time. It can be very lonely. It can be very disorienting. But I think it has highlighted for me how those connections are benefiting families and benefiting students. And it is my greatest hope that all of that relationship, building and bonding will continue when we all get back to the brick and mortar learning that we're used to.
One of the things that Bridey had asked earlier is implications for the workforce. And I think I took it a little bit differently. But when I was thinking about this, we have, from a social emotional learning level, we have modeled for kids that hardship and upheaval do not have to destroy your world. We regrouped quickly, we restructured, we were flexible, and we just kept moving forward. And when you think about, that's extremely powerful for them in their personal life, but in their work life as well. Someday they could be at a corporation where things go south and don't go as planned, and can they rise to the challenge? Can they put new structures in place? Can they learn new tricks and keep moving forward? So exactly. I think that's been very powerful.
I agree that developing that resiliency, right? That's what we want for all of our young people. And we're in this place as a nation where that's certainly, we're calling that into question. Can we bounce back from this? And I feel really confident that New Hampshire students are able to do that. And I think that they're getting a chance to prove themselves right now, that our school communities are very resilient. And, we are able to kind of take up this new challenge and make something really wonderful out of it and learn and grow from it. Absolutely. So we are kind of out of time. If folks want to say anything to wrap up, those are all the questions we had. But I do want to encourage folks who are viewing this, maybe at a later date, later time, to feel free to comment in the comment section, and our Bureau will get back to you. We'll either put you in touch with folks who can speak to your answers, or we'll try to find the answers ourselves as well. So don't be afraid if you're not watching this live, but you do want to ask these guys a great question, please feel free to put it in the chat box and we will address it. Anything else, panelists, that you'd like to share as we kind of wrap this up?
Go ahead, Julie.
You don't have to raise your hands. It's not. It's okay.
Yeah, we've been trained in all the Zoom meetings, Mike.
I know.
A leader can be trained too. I just want to say thank you, Bridey and the organization, and thank you to you, Ellen, because one of the things that is very overwhelming right now is all the resources that are coming our way and having to filter it. And I know if I get something from Bridey and if I get something from the Bureau that it's vetted, it's worth looking at. And it's always 99% of the time I use it and translate it and able to move it forward. So it's really nice knowing I have two good places to go to that's vetted and it's usable and it's exactly what I need. So thank you.
Great to hear.
Yes, thank you.
I agree.
This is, am I on? Yeah. This is an unprecedented learning opportunity. And if we don't take advantage of it, we're really going to miss out. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and we're on Heartbreak Hill. And the thing is that you can't really complete something like this until you've done Heartbreak Hill. And if we do this and do it successfully, what we're going to see on the other side of this has to be transformational. The kids that are in the college that are seeing this happen, that are entering the workforce as our teachers, our members of our staff, our students, their families, all of them, if we don't understand the benefit of this responsibility that we have, we're really going to miss out. So I'm trying to grab onto every moment that I can. And hopefully someday I'll be able to say, remember when we were doing this? We got through that, so we can get through anything.
What I would just like to close with, if I may, is for the viewers and all of our constituents, I want you to rest assured that we are leading New Hampshire well. We are leading New Hampshire in partnership. We are united, and we're very proud of that. And united means as school leaders, in partnership with educators, families, all constituents. We're in this all together, and we will get through it. We are all resilient.
Well, thank you very much for that, Bridey, and thanks for taking the time to kind of co-host this with me today. So folks, thank you very much. Thanks for watching, all of you at home. Just a reminder to follow us on Facebook at NH Student Wellness, Bureau of Student Wellness. You can find us right on our Facebook page. Please definitely like us and follow us, and you'll get lots of updates on whenever we're streaming. And we've got lots of resources that we're posting periodically as well. You can also find us on Twitter at NH Schools and on our YouTube channel. And this actually is going to live on the YouTube channel after we finish live streaming it. So check that out there, and feel free to pass that link along to anyone in the community that you feel would benefit from this. And then you can also check out nhlearnsremotely.com. That is our COVID-19 response remote learning time compilation of lots of resources for instruction and for remote supports as well. So please take a look at that. And as always, if you have any feedback, if you're thinking about a certain topic and have lots of questions about it, if you're interested in sharing resources with us, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to use any of our social media channels to get in touch with us at the Bureau of Student Wellness and at the Department of Ed in general. So thanks again to Executive Director Bridey Bellemare, Executive Director of the New Hampshire Association of School Principals, and then all of our panelists, Julie, thank you, Julie DeLuca, Jeff Druin, Shelly Davis, and Ken Darsney. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.